Lunchtime in Bordeaux. Beautiful here, absolutely extraordinary. School holidays have just ended, so kids are coming back and doing their thing. It's good. Greenland. Easy victim, our Great Wall of China. The defense of Greenland is what we're talking about. And in the first instance, the first and most important chapter in all of this, in a way, and we'll build on this, is what Greenlanders themselves want. Now, when this initial proposal from the Trump administration and his various business allies for the economic development of rare earths or whatever it is that they're involved in, mineral rights in Greenland, there was an interesting division of opinion, apparently, take it which you will from social media, saying that on the one hand, Greenlanders were not keen to have their country taken over by foreigners, and on the other hand, there were some who said, we'll take the money and run. We know we can't fend off the Americans, therefore let's do a deal. The language of the president, what have you. Now, let's think about that just for a minute. Napoleon overran Spain with comparative ease. The British helped later the resistance. But the word guerrilla warfare, I think originated with that Spanish resistance. That you can overrun a country, but if the locals don't want you to be there, you've got a real problem. Now, relatedly, to take a more recent example, the Ukraine, there was a great deal of hand-wringing in Europe, and I understand this, that if the Russians broke through and overran the Ukraine, initially, of course, that was the Russian plan, but later, of course, it became a danger because Russia is vast and huge resources and a huge military and a vast population compared to Ukraine, and therefore the chances that unless the European Union, NATO and Trump and all that making it more complicated, could not defend the Ukraine, then the Ukraine would be overrun. Okay, and then of course the one thing following another, where it would be Poland and the Balts be in danger. Now, a calm reflection on the whole idea of the Russians attempting to sustain a military campaign, ground forces, occupying Poland or the Balts, trailing across the Ukraine, after 4 years of brutal warfare, can you imagine how difficult it would be for the Russians to defend their supply lines? The Ukrainians would make havoc of them, supposedly defeated, supposedly occupied, and supposedly no longer independent, and yet an absolute nightmare for Russian supply. It's already difficult enough as it is, even on Russian territory, with the Ukrainian ability with drones. So you see that. Now, one of the ways of looking at Greenland, just to put it in perspective, is that maybe Greenland's opinion is divided, Greenlanders, between accepting the inevitable or standing and fighting and becoming. Now, this is going to be interesting. If the Americans did take over, and as I say Americans, they aren't Americans really, they're a bunch of oligarchs who want the entire legal framework of restraint, ecological and otherwise, so they can do what they want to extract these minerals, and therefore they want no legal complications either devised by the Greenlanders themselves, the indigenous legal framework, or the one that the Greenland inherits from the Danish colonial period, or from the European Union. They don't want any of that. I mean, really, the whole point geopolitically of taking over Greenland has nothing to do with mineral rights and everything to do with defeating the European Union and breaking it, so that Europeans have no adequate defense of any kind collectively. Nationalists in Europe should take notice of this. When push comes to shove, Brussels may be all Europe has, so tread carefully. But having said that, any kind of external roughhousing of any kind in Greenland, whatever Greenlander opinion is now, would toughen it up very, very quickly. If people saw their pristine island continent being ruined, locals pushed out of jobs, you can see all the complications of foreign interference, landing rights, property rights, who gets what, taxation. You might form up a real, a Spanish ulcer might produce a Greenland ulcer. much like Ukraine would be a Greenland also, as the expression from the Napoleonic Wars had it. Spain was Napoleon's ulcer. It bled the French occupation forces badly. And this could apply certainly to the Ukraine, and it might apply to Greenland. So all of a sudden we're talking about not only initial assessment of forces and ability to resist, we're also talking about how the thing will transform under the impact of some kind of foreign occupation. American oligarch Trump administration, billionaires on the rampage, all of that will have consequences. And it may encourage profound forms of resistance. Now, the logistics of making Greenland work in any sense is the country is so vast and so underpopulated that the population centers become the logistic sore spots, points of vulnerability, airfields, ports, storage facilities, whatever kind of communication system you want to lay down to connect all of this. Those are exposed. So it may not be the easy mark one thinks. Whether it makes Greenland the Great Wall of China is something we'll come to. But in the first instance, yes, easy to occupy, much more difficult perhaps to control, if the Greenlanders decide they don't want to be controlled by outsiders. It'll be a question. So that's the first thing that anyone who, from the outside, from Brussels for that matter, or from Copenhagen or what have you, visits Greenland, is to talk with the locals and see, to test the sentiment. Test the will to resist. Because if the Greenlanders will resist, then there is something to build on for the Europeans and the Canadians. But in the first instance, you must ask the locals how they feel. How willing are they to expend blood and treasure to defend what they have? And that's the ultimate nationalist question. This is a question for patriots. And so what we're really coming down to, a fundamental question to begin this whole discussion with is, are Greenlanders patriots? And are they prepared to bleed and die for Greenland?